Yes, my name is Courtney. I'm a financial educator with MSU Federal Credit Union. We're going to be talking about budgeting, just things to think about in general, and then some things specifically while you're a student and things to keep in mind when you are, looking for that next stage of life and comparing careers and compensation and things to keep in mind with that. So definitely throw stuff in the chat, the Q&A. The more interactive this is, the better, just to make sure everything I'm talking about is beneficial. If you have questions, I want to be able to touch on those, or if you have anything that you want to add, definitely throw that in as well. So budgeting, I know, is not maybe the most fun topic to talk about or really to do, but it is extremely important when you think about our stress levels and our health. Finances play a big role in that. So regardless of the economic climate, money and finances have remained the top stressor in the American Psychological Association survey. It's a lot of S's there, since 2007. So thinking about even now in your life, some of the things that really stress you out, money probably plays a role into some of those things. And then just kind of thinking about that impact as an adult. And if you can learn healthy budgeting techniques now and those habits that can carry over with you, it can really make a big impact in your mental and your physical health as well. So the next one up here talks about the actual physical symptoms that you can have from financial stress. So a lot of times we think, okay, I need to work out, I need to eat better. But what financially or what financial changes can you do, or things can you be aware of that can really have a big impact on your overall health? And then really just touching on the fact that only 30% of Americans have a financial plan that includes savings. As we've seen over the past year and a half, how important savings can be, and really just being prepared for the unexpected and things that we know are going to come up, how that can really alleviate some of that financial strain. So I just wanted to start with some facts, and now let's dig in. I think it can be really beneficial before even like sitting down and looking at your spending or anything like that, trying to identify how you see yourself as a spender or a saver. So I have a couple examples up here on the screen, but there are several more out there that you might identify with. Sometimes people identify with more than one of these. So if there's any that you do identify with, you can throw those in the chat. And if you say all panelists, only I can see that and no one else can. So that way I can kind of read what's there without your name, or if you want to send it to everyone, people can see what you're saying. It does change a lot for people over, the different courses and stages of life that they're in. I know for me, I used to be, I taught first grade in a school that had 100% poverty rate, and I identify as a giver. Financially, for me, even though, that was a job that I did enjoy for the most part, it was not a job that sustainably I could sustain financially, because I was spending all my money on those kids. I used to also look at it as YOLO. What's the point of having money if you don't spend it? But sometimes when you look at it like that, it can be a planner, but end up being YOLO. Yeah, so that happens a lot. You can have a plan, an idea, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple slides later on. But sometimes there's reasons why that happens, and it's totally normal. But I like to think of with YOLO, that's how I used to be. But then I never actually had money for the important things I wanted to do. Like, yes, I could go out to dinner with friends, meet up after work and do things like that. But then when it came to spring break or study abroad or things like that, I didn't have that money when things that actually would have added a lot more value to my life. Whereas if I would have planned a little bit better, I probably could have enjoyed some of those other things more. So merger and giver, identify as a hoarder, but I get nervous around spending money. Ooh, so that's really awesome that you're identifying kind of how money makes you feel. The emotional connection that we all have to money is very different, and it's based on so many different things. So that's a big piece of this as well that I'm going to touch on in a couple other slides. But I can sit here and talk to you about budgeting, and a lot of us know the things that we should be doing with our money. But a lot of times our emotions or that tie that we have to money, or maybe the financial trauma that we've experienced, plays a really big role in that, where we don't maybe follow through with that plan, or we're not able to do some of the things we want to because of that emotion that it causes. I also like to briefly touch on money cycles. So it can be really helpful to identify where you are. So a big thing with budgeting and finances is a lot of times we avoid addressing the problem because it can be kind of stressful. So starting kind of with what money cycle you're in and then identifying what money cycle you'd like to be in can be a spot to start that's not quite as overwhelming. So earn, spend, borrow, spend is where you're getting paid or, you're getting money like refunds or things like that that you have to live off of. But then as soon as you pay your bills and some of the things that you need, you're already out of money. So then you're borrowing either student loans, credit card debt, borrowing from family, and then spending that. And then by the time you get your next paycheck, you're just further in the hole every time. It usually from there transitions to earn, spend, which is paycheck to paycheck. So you're kind of breaking even. From there, people will typically go to earn, spend, save. With this, though, it's very common where you get paid, you pay your bills, you have a little bit left over to live off of, you put a little bit in savings, but as you get low, you slowly keep pulling it out of savings. So it's hard to actually have that savings build up. So the goal ideally would be earn, save, spend. So a lot of times we get paid and we think of all these obligations and bills that we have to pay. Well, you are an obligation for your future as well. So the first thing you can do is take $5, $10. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. I mean, the more you can do, the better. But put that in savings, pay yourself first, and then pay your other obligations. You're gonna, be used to living off what you have left over anyways. And it really just gets you in the habit of doing that. And a really big tip that I found to be beneficial is name a sub saver. So say you have a checking account and then you can have different like savers in there. Give those a name. When I wouldn't give those a name, it's a lot easier to pull money out. Now, if I have a goal that I'm saving for, and I'll show you a chart that I use, I put that name on there. So like if I'm saving up for my daughter's birthday, if I put Natalie on there, there's no way I'm going to pull money out of there because then I feel like, oh, I'm taking money from my daughter and her wonderful birthday that she could have instead of like, oh, it's worth it to go out to eat tonight. I'm just going to pull a little out of savings. It can kind of give it a little bit more value. And then from here is really trying to identify why, that why for you. So what's going to be that motivating factor that's going to encourage you to start budgeting? Because again, we can talk about finances and all this stuff, but if it's not something that one, you're passionate about, or two, you're ready to actually, look at and maybe make a couple changes, it's something that sometimes we don't do unless we find that really big motivating factor. So is it just that you don't want to be stressed about money? You want to be able to have that financial freedom where if something comes up, you have a way to take care of it and you're not stressed, or you're not worried, 3 days before your next paycheck of how am I going to get gas to get to work, or how am I going to eat, or something like that. Maybe you want to be able to move after school and you know that there's going to be a cost to move. There's going to be a security deposit, you're going to have to get a moving truck, things like that. Just being prepared for some of the things that you want to do sometimes can be a motivating factor. But sometimes it also takes looking at maybe why you're not doing it and finding that piece to really encourage. So sometimes people will say, I don't do it because I don't make enough to budget. That's not really how it works. So your financial patterns are really a habit. And yes, there are outside factors and there's life that happens that really impacts you financially. However, if you can get used to budgeting when you have a lower income, you're going to carry those skills over when you have a higher income, which is going to be huge. Sometimes I used to process loan applications and membership applications. And some of the lowest credit scores that I've seen, or the accounts that had the most fees, were actually people that were earning, 6 figures. They just didn't know how to financially manage their money. So even though they had a lot coming in, they didn't know what to do with it. If you can get used to even saving a couple dollars out of each paycheck now, once you do have money coming in or more money coming in, it's going to be that much easier. Sometimes people do it because they don't want spending limitations. So if I review my budget and I see how much I actually spend on Starbucks a month, then I'm going to feel guilty and I'm not going to be able to do that. But it makes me happy right now. It's been a rough year, so I'm going to do that. So it's just kind of like, what can we talk ourselves into? And if anybody identifies or has any other reasons that you maybe want to start being better with your money, or maybe you have started maybe spending with a little bit more intention, add that in. Or if you maybe know any reasons that are holding you back from doing that, you can add that in again. And Also, remember, if it's to only panelists, only I can see that, so nobody else can see. But then it's just really looking at budgeting, and it's a super simple math equation. It's just taking the time to figure out those expenses, and it's really the variable expenses that can be the biggest task. And that's why a lot of times we don't want to do it. If anybody wants to add in the chat too, how they budget. So you can say, I don't. Maybe you check your account every morning. Maybe you use a spreadsheet. Maybe you use an app. Maybe you just sit down with pencil and paper every 2 weeks, every month. Feel free to throw that in there. I'm kind of curious to see what you all are using. For me, I have an Excel spreadsheet. It does the math for me. It has little drop downs that keep me organized. So that way my fixed expenses are already in there, and it takes me a little bit less time each month. And then I kind of just go through and add in my variable expenses. But really just seeing what works for you, and it's going to be different for other people. I tried using apps that would pull all my information in, but for me, then I could still avoid looking at parts of it I didn't want to see. So for me, having to actually put that in a spreadsheet kind of makes it more real, and I can like feel what I've done and maybe either be proud of myself or make some different choices next time. Whereas I've had other people that said they have to use the app because otherwise they trick themselves and keep things out of, that spreadsheet because they don't want to see the real amount. We play games with ourselves, which makes no sense because your budget is really for you and it impacts you. So really just trying to think about like, what's going to be the best for me to make it impactful, but the least amount of work, and really something that you're going to be able to stick with. From there, the budget's either positive, negative, or even. So obviously the goal is always to be positive. The more money we have coming in and the less we have going out gives us more options for, do we want to spend? Do we want to start putting money towards retirement or investing? Or maybe there's other goals or financial things that you want to be able to do that you have that freedom now to kind of see, if I allocate these funds that way or in this saver, that's what I can do with that. If it's negative or even, it can be a little bit discouraging at first, especially if it's, negative or super negative. Again, recognizing that you're a student right now, and it can be a little bit harder to have some of that steady income coming in, but it's still thinking about what choices are we making. And a lot of times it's tweaking those variable expenses that can actually have the biggest income. So, the biggest impact in that budget, and maybe, how you can spend the money that you do have coming in. A lot of times we can't change how much we're spending on rent. You're already, in a lease with that, or you probably can't change how much you're spending on your auto loan or your phone bill. But you can change some of those day-to-day choices that add up a lot. So one of the things that I really like to encourage people to do is improving credit has a huge, huge, huge impact on your budget. So if you maybe have a lower credit score and you have loans, I challenge you to look at what those interest rates are, and then kind of see what you would be paying on that if maybe you had a higher credit score. It can be the difference of tens of dollars a month to $100 a month when you add in, other loans that you might have after college. Adjusting meals and snacks is a big one. You'd be amazed at how much is spent on food. It's typically the second highest cost after rent or mortgage is what's spent on food per month. A big one is, while you're a student, take advantage of any discounts you get. There are so many discounts available to you that you probably don't even know about. So just ask anywhere you go, do I get a discount for being a student? What other discounts could you get for things that you're involved in? With us, we have through our medical insurance, for some reason, I get 10% off hotels.com. I would never think about that until I started working here and talking about these things and realizing that there's discounts built into so many things, and 10-20% off can have a huge impact on what you're spending on stuff. Subscriptions are another one that can add up really quickly. So I know for us, we cut out cable because we thought it was ridiculous to spend $150 a month on cable. And then a few months ago, we realized that we had Hulu, we had Netflix, we had Peacock, we were paying for internet, there was something else. And it was just like, what was the point of cutting that out if we think, okay, this is only $5 a month, $10 a month for these things. But then once they start adding up, what's that impact? So really just being cognizant of that as well. And then keeping in mind that your budget is going to change all the time. So being specific with it is really important. I know for me, I used to say like, I'm going to give myself a budget of $100 until I get paid next time on food. So then I'd go to Meijer and I'd spend $99 and be super proud of myself because I stayed within my food budget. Well, there was going to be several times, between the time I got paid next, where maybe I just wanted to grab like a quick coffee in the morning, or I didn't have time to make lunch, so I was going to grab something really quick, or I'm pumping gas and I decided to go in for a bag of chips or something. That should all be kind of factored in there. So now I give myself like a grocery budget. I give myself like how much I can spend out on snacks and things like that. And that way it just keeps me in check a little bit more. But also being realistic. So if I said I was only going to spend $10 a week on lunch, that's not realistic. I can meal prep and I'll probably eat that for lunch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I know Thursday and Friday, especially right now when I'm on campus, I'm probably going to walk across the street on Grand River and grab something to eat. And then I'm not being realistic with myself there. And then being flexible. So your budget will change depending on the type of what season it is. But also just where you're at in life, what stage you're at in life, and what's happening. So my budget always looks a lot different on like what I'm spending on fun in the winter versus the summer. I tend to try and save in the winter months. People aren't doing as much. I don't really like being out in the cold, so I try and save up my money then. And then I spend a little bit more in the summer. So there's other things up here where your budget has probably changed quite a bit over the past year and a half, and kind of thinking what things do you want to keep the same? What things, do you want to change, and kind of looking at that a little bit more. And then these are just some free things to keep in mind. I'm guessing a lot of them are going to slowly go away as free options now that things are opening back up and people can start making profit off of these again. But again, just trying to take advantage of any free things you can do. And the online engagement center still has a lot. I'm hoping, next year the engagement centers will be back open. Everyone can get back in there. But for now, you still can do a lot of the same things online. So take advantage of any of those free options you can do. And then this right here is just talking a little bit more about how we know some of the things that we should be doing financially, and sometimes we do something else, which can result in like shame and guilt. So really just recognizing that money is something that a lot of times we don't talk about. It's seen as taboo, and it can cause, you to be in cycles without even recognizing it, or really knowing financial changes that you can make to really, feel like you're in a better spot. So up here, it talks about, financial education. So we can sit here again, like I've said, and talk about this is how you budget. These are things to keep in mind. This is how you might identify. But we all have the ability in our heads to convince us that something's better in the moment. So say I plan out, what we're going to have for dinner every night this week. And then I have a super stressful day and I'm like, I'm not going to get home until 6. And then I got to give my daughter a bath. So even though I was going to plan on cooking this and we have the groceries, I'm just going to stop and pick something up, even though in my head, it's like financially, that's not the best thing to do, but just to get by today, I'm going to do that. That's fine. Everybody does that. It's just recognizing when that becomes a cycle and when that is actually impacting you. And it doesn't always have to result in guilt and shame. It really is something that, again, just keeping an eye on yourself. So it's hard because they say like keeping up with the Kardashians, you see so much stuff online and on TV, and even in school, you're like, okay, so, some of my peers, maybe they have like a new car or they're able to move every year into these nice apartments and you want to do the same, but you don't know what financial support they have. You don't know what financial situation they're in, or maybe if they're getting into a level of debt to do that. But sometimes you want to try and keep up with that, or you think, well, I'm working just as hard as them. I deserve these things as well. It happens a lot when students graduate, and especially when you graduate, with people in the same field. And then maybe, you get similar jobs, and then all of a sudden they're buying a new house and a new car, and you think, I want to do these things as well. Again, keeping in mind, you could be in totally different financial spots. But sometimes you see that and then you convince yourself, like, I do need the same, I deserve this. And then maybe you indulge a little bit, feel good for a little bit. But then after a while, that can fade, and then it does become like, okay, now I'm down again. How do I make myself feel better? So just recognizing when that is becoming a financial cycle. I know for me, when everything shut down, I was buying a lot of stuff on Amazon because I didn't have much else to do and I was stressed out. And it got to the point where I kind of recognized I have stuff showing up at my house that I don't need. Financially, this is not smart. And then I would put stuff in there and then I would wait a day. And the next day I kind of look back and it's like, is this something I actually need? Is it for the house? Is it for the family? Or was I just, having a bad moment? So I turned to that and then I would kind of like eliminate stuff out of my cart and it stopped that cycle a little bit for me. So just kind of trying to recognize that. This is also something that can be super beneficial to reach some financial goals you have. So maybe, next year, you're going to graduate and you do want to relocate. So that's going to be, maybe you want to have $1,000, $2,000 built up in savings just for any cost that might arise from that. Or maybe you want to study abroad. Really whatever that goal could be, it's different for everyone. I have some goals that are $100 and I have some that are a couple $1,000. It's really just seeing what that is. For some people, it might even be, I want to start investing. So I want to, thank you, Garth, student discounts in Michigan and MSU employee discounts and services. Yes, take advantage of all the discounts. But with this, it can be a really awesome way to just kind of look at, is it feasible to reach some of these goals or not? And how do I actually get there? So it used to be where I'd be like, I want to take a vacation next year. And I leave it at that. Well, if I don't know where I want to go or what I want to do or when I want to do it, how do I know how much money I need saved up? How much, am I just planning to have that money just in an extra paycheck, or am I going to plan for that? So up here just gives a couple examples. So thinking about like, what is that goal? How much do you need to get there? How much time do you have? And then breaking it down. So how much would that be to save per month? Or if you get paid, twice a month, how much would that be per paycheck? And then what things can you do to reach that? So this first example might be, if you don't really have that much money that's extra to pull out, these are ideas of like, could I meal prep so that I'm not eating out? Could I downgrade a couple of my subscriptions or cancel a couple of subscriptions that could free up, $20 a month, and then I'm only trying to save up another 22. Make coffee instead of going to Starbucks. That's a difference of $5, $6 a day and 25 cents a day. And I tell you, you can make some really good coffee at home. Maybe picking up shifts, things like that. And then the next example kind of breaks down if maybe you have money, but again, you just have not taken the time to do it or reach some of those goals. So this would be, maybe if you're just like, I have to finally do it, set up an automatic transfer, name that sub saver again to give you additional motivation, set reminders if you don't want to set up an automatic payment. It can also be really helpful for me. I have Excel spreadsheets that show like what that goal is, when I want to get there, how much I have saved, and then how much I have left. And then that can also help motivate you every time you move money over and you see the amount that you need shrink and shrink. It does give you that motivation to keep going a little bit more. And if anyone has any goals, anything they're saving up for, throw that in the chat. I'm interested to see that. We talked about paying yourself first a little bit. But really, again, just trying as much as possible to get in the habit of putting yourself first as a financial obligation. Again, you want to make sure you're still paying all those bills. If not, it doesn't do you much good to have money in savings if you have, creditors and collection agencies out to get you. But making sure that you are making yourself a priority. With finances, it's one of those things where nobody really looks out for you with it like you will. So you kind of have to be proactive and the one to take charge with that. Or else one day you're kind of sitting there trying to figure out, how do I get there? That was a problem I had. I will tell you, when I was in college, I did not worry about finances. I worked full time. I went to school full time, and I convinced myself because I was doing that, I could spend the money I was making. And it took me years to recover financially, build my credit score back up and get out of debt and in a place where I'm comfortable. But it was a long road. That's one of the things with finances is not much changes overnight. If you're somebody that maybe that you think, once I have a little bit less debt, it will be easier for me to save, put money towards retirement, do some of those things. These are two methods that we hear we hear a lot of students say it's successful. I personally have done the avalanche method and I found that to be super successful. I really dislike paying interest. So I wanted to look at all of my debt listed out and see what had the highest interest rate and what loans I was paying the most on interest. I identified which one that was and put a little bit extra towards that each month. Then once that debt was paid off, I took the amount I was paying towards that and then put that towards the debt with the next highest interest rate. And as I slowly paid off new things, I was able to pay off the other debt so much faster because I was putting the additional amount towards that. And that can be a really great way to see that debt go away a lot faster. If you are struggling financially, that's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If it's because of choices you're making, it's kind of just looking at what things can I change. And if it's just outside factors, really kind of being proactive again. So before you're late on a payment, call them, let them know what's going on, see if they have any options for you. Do they have payment plans? Can you stop payments for a couple months? What things are available to you? You'd be amazing at the opportunities you have if you can make that call before you're late on something. I know with us, we give members the option of paying, a fee and then they can skip that month's payment. Or if they are, in financial strain for maybe a month or 2 or 3, we'll give them 3 months where they just make interest only payments. And maybe they're paying $20 a month instead of $300 a month. So really just being proactive with that. And then taking advantage of any resources that are available to you. Again, there's so much available to you through campus, even if you're not on campus. Look online and see what those resources are and reach out and see what options you have. There are a lot of people that are there to help. It's just kind of on you to make sure that you're looking at that and taking advantage of it. All right, so then just kind of switching the focus a little bit to when we're thinking about budgeting and income and that next step. So right now, as a student, maybe you're not able to work full-time or even work part-time, and maybe you're budgeting off of like a large sum of money that you get that has to last for a couple months. So really just kind of thinking about what that impact is going to be after graduation and starting a job. I know for me, I thought once I graduate, I'm going to have my adult job and I'm just going to have a lot more money and these things are going to be an issue. And then I was, a first grade teacher in a district that could not afford to pay me very well. And I already had debt. And again, I was, somebody that was spending a lot of money on my classroom. So I was getting further and further in debt. I did not fully look at income and compensation and think about all the factors that went into it. And it wasn't until I started working at the credit union that I realized how much I was making less than $30,000 and was paying, $300 a month on, medical insurance, and then all the other deductions that were coming out. So then thinking about what that actual paycheck was after that was not much. So then I'm sitting there thinking, how do I live off of this? So just kind of some things to think about so that that does not happen to you. When you're looking at salary versus hourly, just kind of thinking about what that means for the flexibility with your workload, or what that means compensation wise as well. So with salary, is it actually going to end up being more than it would be if you were hourly and had the opportunity for overtime or some of those other things? So really kind of doing the math there and breaking that down. But I think what's even more important than that is really considering what else, what other factors would be pulled out of that paycheck or would have an impact on the amount that you're actually receiving. So I met with a student earlier who had, he had to do an interview for his finance class. And we talked a lot about, he was wondering about, like, do I plan for savings first? When I get my job, do I put money towards retirement? Do I focus on paying off debt? We were kind of talking about how you kind of want to focus on all three if you can, knowing that it's not going to make, you have to have a little bit everywhere. If you have a job, though, we talked a lot about how if you have a job that matches what you're putting in your 401k or can match that, how much that can free up in your actual budget to be able to put that towards debt or put that towards savings. So for me, when I was teaching, I tried to put, 8-10% of my paycheck away to my 401k because I knew how important that was and the benefit of compound interest. However, that was huge on my budget again. However, at the credit union, I put 5% in my 401k and the credit union puts 10% in. So I have 15% going in still, but I have an additional 10% of my income that's not going towards that now that I can put towards other things like paying off my debt faster or putting more money in savings and having additional opportunities, maybe investing a little bit more. So really just thinking about that. Insurance is a big one as well. So it's super beneficial to have good insurance. I know for us, our medical, dental, and vision insurance is 100% covered. So the credit union pays about $1,600 a month for my husband, my child, and myself to be covered on everything, which that would be money that would be coming out of my paychecks otherwise. We probably wouldn't have that good of insurance if that was the case, because that's a lot of money to be coming out, but just the impact that that has on a budget as well. Thinking about any discounts you get through an employer, what benefits would come with that other than just insurance and things like that. What is included with professional development and paid time off? All of these things are compensation factors that need to be considered and have a huge, huge, huge impact on your budget that sometimes is really overlooked. So there are some really cool calculators out there that can help you with some of these things. Taking into account the cost of living is another big one. So if you get offered a job, with the same salary in 2 different locations, that might actually be the difference of $10,000, $20,000 when you look at the actual cost that you would spend to be living there. All right, so this is a lot of information. Again, throw in any questions if you have them. It doesn't even have to just be about budgeting, anything you want to know. But things to keep in mind, I know a lot of times we say time is money. And I think a lot of times people think of that as like, if you put a lot of time in something, that could be money you're wasting. I kind of like to look at that on the flip side of the more time that you can spend researching different things that could save you money can actually save you a lot of money in the long run. And then eventually that could end up saving you time. Another one is it's okay to ask for help. Typically, once people are struggling financially, that's when they shut down talking about it the most or don't really want it to be a conversation. But just recognizing that most people have been in the same position you are, or there might be things that they or advice they could give you or something from the conversation that you could really take from there. I know for me, my finances when I started working here switched so much because all we do is talk about money and finances, and you learn new techniques to try. You learn things that you were doing that were unhealthy, or maybe you identify things that you are doing that you're like, "Ooh, this is awesome," and you can be proud of yourself. Saving is a habit, so I know I've talked about that one a lot. It's never too late to start. So even if you're somebody that so far has not really put much thought towards finances, which I'm guessing you have if you're here, just recognizing that even if you're in debt or maybe your account is negative at the moment or whatever, making these small steps is the first thing that you can do to change that. And if you don't start, it's probably not going to happen. And then involving others. So this is something just to kind of keep in mind if maybe you have a partner or somebody that you're living with or sharing expenses with. If one person kind of decides they're going to make some financial changes and they don't involve the other people, it can be really hard for everyone to be on the same page, and it can cause some issues. So just kind of keeping that in mind of involving anyone else that it might impact, or even just, involving others to see what their advice is. Let's see. Okay, so check us out on Financial 4.0. If you don't already, there is a summer quiz on there where you have the option to take it. And if you get 80% or better, I think you're entered to win a gift card. I don't remember how much, because I know during the normal semester it's $10, but this one's longer, so it's worth more. If you want to win a gift card, definitely check over to our mobile app or website and take that. And then there's a lot more information on budgeting and different financial topics. And there's a lot of calculators on there as well that I use to find extremely beneficial. There's ones like if you're going to be taking out a loan to see what loan amount you could really afford based on the monthly payments that you could afford, how long it will take you to reach certain goals and things like that. Take advantage of all of those things. If you are a member, again, when I was talking about discounts, local loyalty is big. So I think it's like 20% off Hungry Howie's and a lot of other discounts for places in the area. So if you are a member, a lot of times you just have to use your debit card or your credit card. not like you have to do anything special, or you just tell them you're a member. Definitely check that out. And then I saved a little bit of time at the end for questions. So I'm going to hang out and wait for those questions to come in. And answer anything you've got.